Okay, greetings, beloved. This is Tony. I said something the other day in the last video about a book that I'm writing. I'm calling it The 13 Laws of the Imagination. And someone had asked if I would possibly go over these laws. And so I'm just going to show you a preliminary of what I've put down, or kind of how I've composed it. I'm still sort of detailing each one. But basically, it's 13 laws of the imagination. And 13 is very significant in Scripture. People don't really catch that part. I think this is one of the ideas that are bound by the Word, but they receive not the Spirit. Well, there's Christ and 12 disciples, uh, which is 13. Christ's first miracle. It was Christ, 6 disciples, 6 stone pots of water, 13. The steps to Solomon's throne. It was 6 steps. It had a lion on each side, been a total of 12. Then the footstool, which would have been 13, that was connected to the throne. So 13 is a majorly significant number. Buildings do not have 13 floors. We're taught 13 is this bad, bad, bad thing. Well, I've seen a few other people on the internet, and a lot of their things is that things are backwards. Yeah, in some ways, very much so. It's don't believe nothing you hear and only half of what you see. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go through this little Word document that I had sort of put together. The first law is the law of oneness. Everything is connected to everything else. Everything we think, do, say, and believe affects everything around us. You see, and I'm sort of putting these symbols. This is an interesting symbol. It's sort of weird. For me, it has a different meaning. I had a dream. I was being shown how to write my name. And this is how I was being told to write my name. And I knew what the name was. Okay, but in this world, it's really funny. I think in the Kabbalah, it means Kethar, the crown. In other symbols, it means the sun, which I thought was profound. But it was a dream. I didn't know what this was until I had the dream. And then I started looking to see, and it was a dot with a circle around it. Sort of a part of the whole. The circle is all inclusive, it's everything. You see, it's not divided, good and evil, right and wrong, left and right, the dualities. So, anyway, this is the first law, the law of divine oneness. The second one is the law of vibration. Everything in the universe moves, vibrates, and travels in circular patterns. The same principles in the physical world applies to our thoughts, words, feelings, and desires in the etheric world. Each sound, thing, and thought has its own unique vibrational frequency unto itself. And for this one, I put what's called Metatron's cube. It's the 13 circles. And it's pretty amazing. In this geometry is all the platonic solids, the 5 platonic solids, that which scientists tell us today that all of creation is made up of these 5 platonic solids. And this is sacred geometry here. And it's a profound thing. And for me, many years ago, it started with a dream about Metatron's cube. And I heard it all night long. I didn't know what Metatron's cube was. And the next morning, I got up and I started looking and reading, and here I am now. The next law is 3. It's the law of action. The law of action must be applied for us to manifest things on earth Therefore, we must engage in actions that support our thoughts, our emotions, dreams, and words. You see, it's sort of the idea if you want the fruit, you got to plant the seed. And it's sort of, you can't be a couch potato, you know, and have dreams. You ever heard the saying, some people dream their dreams, others live them? Well, the ones that are living them are taking action. So this would be applying the third law, the law of action. The fourth law is the law of correspondence. This law states that all principles of all laws of physics that explain the physical world, energy, light, vibration, and emotion, are the corresponding principles in the etheric universe, as above, so below. And here I sort of put in the idea of the tree, because what most people don't understand, whatever the tree looks like above the ground, it looks very much the same below the ground in the roots. There's a funny thing in that thought. The fruit, if it's in the root, it's in the fruit. Okay, we'll move on to the fifth. Fifth is the law of cause and effect. This universal law states that nothing happens by chance or outside of the universal laws. Every action has a reaction or consequence, and we reap what we have sown. And, this is a good place to bring this up. Basically, all of these principles, these 13 laws, are taught in Scripture. So, even though maybe I'm using more scientific, modern day words, it's still sort of a modern day way. You see, they'd call this New Age. Well, a lot of things that happened in Scripture, there weren't words at that time to explain such things. You see, you couldn't say telephone, TV, cellular, electronic, electricity, uh, any flying, planes. None of these things existed. So, can you imagine trying to explain these things to someone 2,000 years ago and having to use that language at that time? I mean, it'd be very difficult. But anyway, this goes on. It says, karma is the universal law of cause and effect. You reap what you sow. You get what you earn. You are what you eat. If you give love, you get love. Revenge returns itself upon the avenger. Okay, so we'll move on. The sixth law is the law of compensation. This law is the law of cause and effect applied to blessings and abundance provided for us. The visible effect of our deeds is given to us in gifts, money, inheritance, friendships, and blessings. And I sort of used here the law of compensation. Your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. The seventh law is the law of attraction. This law demonstrates how we create the things, events, and people that come into our lives. Our thoughts, feelings, words, actions produce energies, which in turn attract like energies. Negative energy attracts negative energy. Positive energy attracts positive energy. And the little piece I added in is what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. And and over the years in my videos, I have spoke so much about the imagination and how powerful it really is. And the whole concept of the fact that you have such a powerful tool with the understanding that there are men in this world that influence it. They influence your imagination and basically tell you what to imagine, and you create it. Versus taking your own power and creating what you imagine. And then I kind of cover that by the 13th law. 8, it's the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. This law states that out of the universal laws of imagination, this is a powerful one. It states that all persons have the power within them to change the conditions of their life. Higher vibration consumes and transforms lower vibration. Thus, each of us can change the energy in our lives by understanding the universal laws and applying the principles in such a way as to effect change. Here I included the cloud and the rainbow. Christ comes back in a cloud with a rainbow about his feet. Well, what you don't really understand is the cloud is the symbol for imagination. You see, in scriptures, God is always in a cloud or a mist. You see, and really it takes light and water, which is the cloud, to make the rainbow. I have different understandings of that, and it's so hard to share this stuff. It really is. 9 is the law of relativity. This law states that each person will receive a series of problems, tests of initiations, for the purpose of strengthening the light within. We must consider each of the tests to be a challenge and remain connected to our hearts when proceeding to solve the problems. The law also teaches us to compare our problems to others' problems and put everything in proper perspective. No matter how bad we perceive our situation to be, there is always someone in a worse position. It's all relative. And then I included here, I cried because I had no shoes. Then I met a man who had no feet. And I used to say, sometimes I'd say, "Hey, Tony, how you doing?" And I'm like, compared to what? Sometimes they'd say, "How you been?" And I'm like, "Well, better than some, not as good as others." You see, it's relative. It's comparable. And comparable, compare ABO. It's like comparable to my left hand or compared to my right. ABO, comparable. I don't know. I have a word thing. Okay, 13th law is the law of polarity. This law states that everything is on a continuum and has an opposite. This is what I was talking about in the last video, the face of difference. We can suppress and transform undesirable thoughts by concentrating on the opposite pole. It is the law of mental vibration. Okay, and there's a really funny thing. There's a story in Scripture, and I don't remember where it is, but there was, from what I remember in this particular story, because there's so much in Scripture, there were men that were hungry. And in the story, they stacked stones. They sat on the stones, and then the story goes on and says, and they did eat. Well, for me, okay, they're sitting there. They don't actually have food. They're starving. But did those men sit there on those stones imagining the most wonderful meal that they could imagine? Telling each other about it. You see, and in that imagining, the smelling the steak, tasting the steak, you see, through the five senses, it was as if they had eaten it. So, it's concentrating. If you're hot, focus on being cold. If you're cold, focus on being hot. If you're poor, focus on being rich. I mean, it's the opposite pole. I used to say, oh, yeah, I'm shooting for 1,000,000, but if I get halfway, I'm doing really good. Yes? Okay, number 11, the law of rhythm. This law states that everything vibrates and moves to certain rhythms. These rhythms establish seasons, cycles, stages of development, and patterns. These cycles repeat the regularity of God's universe. Masters know how to rise above negative parts of a cycle by never getting excited, or never getting too excited, or allowing negative things to penetrate their consciousness. Okay, allowing negative things to penetrate their consciousness. Okay, well, the consciousness is the imagination. And in Hebrew, there's a word, dimyon, and it looks like dimyon, D-I-M-Y-O-N, and it means dark imaginings, negative things. You see, so it's the idea, in a strange way. This is why in Christianity we're taught to count blessings. Because, see, if you're focusing on the good, you're casting out the negative. You're casting out demons, dark imaginings, because you're being grateful and counting the good things in life. So this is sort of the law of rhythm. Here, I put in, I think it's Newton's cradle. If you drop one, when it hits, this one goes up. And when it comes back, one goes up. If you drop two, these two go up. If you drop three, when you hit the third one, these three will go up. The one in the center swings with both of them. If you drop four, four comes down, the next four go up. So it's a very interesting thing, and it sort of demonstrates this law of rhythm. Okay, law 12, and it's the law of gender. This law states that everything has a masculine yang and a feminine yin principles, and these are the bases for all creation. The spiritual initiate must balance the masculine and feminine energy within themselves to become a master and true co-creator with God. Okay, and I included here, this is considered to be like the masculine and the feminine. Okay, it's the duality. It's why they have the moon and the sun. All right, then here in Scripture, wisdom buildeth her temple of 7 pillars. If you actually count these here, there are 7. Sorry, my little cursor, you may not be able to see it. But there's 1, 2, 3, and there's 4 on the back side. So this would be like the temple of wisdom. All right, then right here on the top, I did a video a while back, is the Maltese cross, which is right in the center. Now, I've spoke a lot about um, 9. Well, if you've got 7 pillars here, and 1 here, and 1 here, yep, that's 9, which is also the 9 dimensions of consciousness, 9 levels of the imagination. It even gets into the 7 chakras here, and the 2 that are above. So, I mean, I've got a lot to fill in, and this is just a preliminary layout. Then, the 13th law is the law of love. The whole of this law is do as thou wilt in love, in mind, body, and soul, and bring harm to none. And this is, then I included, this is what's called the unicursal hexagram. It actually is 7 points, but it's made with 6 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the most important part is right here in the center. This is 7. And actually, if you look this up, this will actually be even associated with other symbols as far as the planets. And right here in the center, they have this symbol right here. That is in the center. That is the 7. It is Kethar. It is the crown. It is the sun. Okay? And then I'm going to, so that was this. Then if we come on, it's really strange. Several days last week, I was doing something, and something come up, and it said Saint John. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, Saint John. You know, I've never rolled on. And within the next evening or so, something else showed up, and it was Saint John. And then the very next morning, I went to the store. A friend had been with me. They had gotten out of the car. They had left their window down. And I had reached over to let the window up, and the vehicle parked right beside me had a big sticker on the side window, and it said St. John. And I thought, well, wow, you know, that's something. So I took a photo of it. You know, like, this is not a coincidence. This is, you know, it's what's called coincidental awareness. Uh, anyway, St. John, this is the symbol. And I showed and found this symbol in a video that's called Time and Space. And I found this symbol when I took one circle and I surrounded it by 6. I surrounded it by 6, which is the normal 13. But out of curiosity, I could see that 6 more circles would easily fit in there. And as crazy as that was, that 666 thing, I thought, well, you know, I just got to see. And in the geometry, all I can find is this symbol. And the most amazing thing is, St. John used this symbol, and it meant something to the effect of like the vessel had been prepared to receive the power of God. And it was like balancing the power. And it was, you know, I'm going to include that in another video, but very interesting. These are what I would tell you are the 13 universal laws. And actually, if you kind of move beyond sort of the idea of modern day words explaining these, you would find these 13 principles are taught in Scripture. They're just using a different language and time to explain it. So I hope this kind of answers some of the questions, and that's why, that 13th law, I mean, it's getting to an understanding that it's all God. Everything. You can't divide it. I don't know. So it's just the 13 laws of the imagination. All right. Have a great night.